I always loved driving at night. There was something soothing about the dark roads, the quiet music, and the occasional headlights of other cars. I felt free and relaxed, away from the stress of my daily life. That night, I was driving back home from a long day at work. I had to take a detour because of some road construction, so I ended up on a narrow and winding road that I had never been on before. It was surrounded by thick woods and had no street lights. I checked my GPS and saw that I still had about 20 minutes to go before I reached the main highway. I turned up the volume of my radio and tried to enjoy the ride. But then, I noticed something strange. There was a car behind me, following me closely. It had been there for a while, but I didn't pay much attention to it until I realized that it was matching my speed and distance. It was a black sedan with tinted windows and no license plate. I couldn't see who was inside, but I felt a chill down my spine. I tried to shake off the feeling and told myself that it was probably just a coincidence. Maybe they were going the same way as me, or maybe they were lost and needed directions. I decided to slow down and let them pass me. But they didn't. They kept following me even when I changed lanes or turned corners. They were tailgating me, and I could see their headlights in my rearview mirror. I started to panic. What did they want from me? Were they robbers, kidnappers, murderers? Did they have a gun, a knife, a bomb? I reached for my phone and tried to call 911, but there was no signal. I was alone on a deserted road with a mysterious car behind me. I looked at my GPS and saw that I was only 10 minutes away from the highway. I decided to speed up and try to lose them. I pressed the gas pedal and drove as fast as I could, ignoring the speed limit and the curves. The car behind me did the same. They were still on my tail, and I could hear their engine roaring. I was scared out of my mind. I prayed that nothing would happen to me, that I would make it to the highway, that I would see a police car, that I would be safe. But then, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There was a roadblock ahead, with a sign that said a road closed. There was no way to go around it, no way to turn back. I was trapped. I slammed the brakes and stopped the car. The car behind me did the same. I looked at my rearview mirror and saw that they had turned off their headlights. They were waiting for me to make a move. I didn't know what to do. I was paralyzed with fear. Then, I heard a knock on my window. I turned my head and saw a man standing next to my car. He was wearing a black mask, a black hoodie, and black gloves. He had a crowbar in his hand. He smiled and said, "Hello, friend. I've been looking for you." I screamed and tried to lock the doors, but it was too late. He smashed the window and grabbed me by the collar. He dragged me out of the car and threw me on the ground. He kicked me in the ribs and punched me in the face. He laughed and said, "Well, you're mine now. You're going to pay for what you did." I didn't know what he was talking about. I didn't know who he was or why he was after me. I begged him to stop, to let me go, to spare my life. But he didn't listen. He raised the crowbar and swung it at my head. I closed my eyes and waited for the end. But it never came. Instead, I heard a gunshot. I opened my eyes and saw that the man had fallen to the ground, with a bullet hole in his chest. I looked up and saw another man standing over me. He was wearing a police uniform and had a gun in his hand. He said, "Don't worry, you're safe now. I'm here to help you." I was confused and relieved. I asked him who he was and how he found me. He said, "I'm Detective Jones. I've been tracking this guy for months. He's a serial killer who targets random drivers at night. He's killed at least 10 people, and you were his next victim. I've been following him since he left his hideout, and I saw him following you. I tried to catch up with you, but he was too fast. I had to wait until he stopped to make my move. I'm sorry I couldn't get here sooner, but I'm glad I made it in time." I thanked him for saving my life. I was returning from a party, feeling happy and relaxed. I had a great time with my friends, celebrating my birthday. I was driving on a deserted road, listening to some music. The snow was falling softly, creating a beautiful scenery. I felt peaceful and content. I didn't notice the car behind me until it was too late. It was a black SUV with tinted windows and no license plate. It was following me closely, flashing its headlights and honking its horn. I felt a surge of fear and confusion. Who was this? What did they want? I tried to speed up, hoping to lose them, but they matched my pace and kept tailing me. I tried to change lanes, hoping to find another car or a police officer, but there was no one else on the road. I was alone and trapped. I looked for an exit, hoping to find a town or a gas station, but there was none. The road was long and straight, with no signs of civilization. I felt a chill run down my spine. I was in trouble. I grabbed my phone and tried to call 911, but there was no signal. I cursed and threw the phone on the passenger seat. I looked at the rearview mirror and saw the SUV getting closer. It was trying to ram me off the road. I swerved and dodged, but it was relentless. It hit my bumper and made me spin. I screamed and gripped the wheel. I regained control and kept driving, hoping to escape. But it was no use. The SUV hit me again, harder this time. It pushed me to the side of the road, where there was a deep ditch. I felt the car tilt and flip. I felt the airbag deploy and hit my face. I felt the glass shatter and cut my skin. I felt the pain and the blood. I felt the darkness and the silence. I woke up to a cold and wet sensation. I opened my eyes and saw the snow covering my windshield. I smelled the smoke and the gas. I heard the fire and the crackling. I realized I was upside down, hanging from my seatbelt. I realized I was still alive. I tried to move, but I felt a sharp pain in my leg. I looked down and saw a metal rod piercing my thigh. I gasped and groaned. I reached for the seatbelt buckle, hoping to free myself, but it was jammed and stuck. I was trapped and bleeding. I looked for my phone, hoping to find it, but it was nowhere to be seen. It must have flown out of the window when the car flipped. I felt a surge of panic and despair. I was alone and helpless. I looked for the SUV, hoping to see it, but it was gone. It must have driven away after it crashed me. I felt a surge of anger and hatred. They had done this to me. They had tried to kill me. But why? Who were they? What did they want? I had no answers. I had no clues. I had no idea. I started to cry and scream, hoping to be heard, but there was no one to hear me. The road was empty and quiet. The snow was falling and covering. The fire was burning and spreading. I was dying. I closed my eyes and prayed, hoping for a miracle. But there was no miracle. There was only pain and fear. I was alone. I had not escaped the horror of the winter night drive. I closed my eyes and prayed, hoping for a miracle. But there was no miracle. There was only pain and fear. I was alone. I had not escaped the horror of the winter night drive. But then, I heard a sound. A faint sound, but a sound nonetheless. It was a siren. A police siren. I opened my eyes and saw a flashing light in the distance. It was getting closer. Someone had seen the fire. Someone had called for help. Someone was coming to save me. I felt a surge of hope and relief. I wasn't alone. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't dead. I tried to scream, but my voice was weak and hoarse. I tried to wave, but my arm was numb and heavy. I tried to stay awake, but my eyelids were drooping and heavy. I tried to hold on, but my grip was slipping and weak. I was fading. I had escaped the horror of the winter night drive, but I had not escaped death. I was driving home from a long day at work, feeling tired and hungry. The snow was falling heavily, reducing the visibility to almost zero. I turned on the radio to keep myself awake, but all I could hear was static and some faint voices. I checked the GPS on my phone, hoping to find a shortcut or a gas station. But the signal was weak and the map was blurry. I cursed under my breath and kept driving, hoping to see some signs of civilization soon. Suddenly, I saw a flash of red in the corner of my eye. It was a stop sign, barely visible in the snow. I slammed the brakes, but it was too late. I skidded past the sign and into a dark road. I tried to turn back, but the car was stuck in the snow. I felt a surge of panic and frustration. I grabbed my phone and tried to call for help, but there was no answer. I looked around, hoping to see some lights or houses, but all I could see was darkness and trees. I felt a chill run down my spine. I was alone and stranded in the middle of nowhere. I decided to stay in the car and wait for someone to pass by. I turned on the heater and wrapped myself in a blanket. I tried to calm myself down, telling myself that everything would be okay. I closed my eyes and drifted into a restless sleep. I woke up to a loud thud. I opened my eyes and saw a shadowy figure standing outside my window. It was a man wearing a hooded coat and a mask. He was holding a crowbar in his hand. He smashed the window and reached for the door handle. I screamed and kicked him in the face. He staggered back and dropped the crowbar. I grabbed it and swung it at him. He dodged and punched me in the stomach. I gasped and dropped the crowbar. He picked it up and raised it above his head. I closed my eyes and waited for the end, but it never came. I heard a gunshot and a thud. I opened my eyes and saw the man lying on the ground, blood pooling around his head. I looked up and saw another man standing over him, holding a shotgun. He was wearing a sheriff's badge and a hat. He looked at me and smiled. "Are you okay, ma'am?" he asked. I nodded, too shocked to speak. "I'm sorry I'm late. I was patrolling the area and I saw your car. I followed the tracks and found you here. This guy is a serial killer. He's been preying on people who get lost in the snow. He's been on the run for months. I've been looking for him for a long time. I'm glad I got here in time." He reached for the door and opened it. He helped me out of the car and wrapped me in his coat. He led me to his patrol car and put me in the back seat. He got in the driver's seat and started the engine. "Don't worry, ma'am. You're safe now. I'll take you to the nearest town and get you some help. You're lucky to be alive." I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and gratitude. I thanked him and leaned back in the seat. I closed my eyes and let out a sigh. I was safe. I had survived. I had escaped the horror of the winter night drive. He drove me to the nearest town, which was about an hour away. He told me his name was Jake and he had been a sheriff for 15 years. He asked me some questions about myself, but I didn't feel like talking much. I was still in shock and pain. He understood and didn't push me. He was kind and gentle. He took me to a small hospital where I was treated for my injuries. I had some bruises and cuts, but nothing serious. He stayed with me until I was discharged. He offered to take me to a hotel, but I declined. I wanted to go home as soon as possible. He agreed and drove me to the airport. He bought me a ticket and helped me board the plane. He hugged me and wished me well. He gave me his phone number and told me to call him if I ever needed anything. He said he would keep in touch and update me on the case. He said he was glad he met me, even under these circumstances. He said I was brave and strong. He said he admired me. I thanked him and smiled. I felt a strange warmth in my chest. I felt a connection with him. I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt alive. I boarded the plane and took my seat. I looked out the window and saw him waving at me. I waved back and closed my eyes. I thought about him and the horror I had escaped. I thought about my life and what I wanted to do with it. I thought about the future and the possibilities. I was safe. I had survived. I had escaped the horror of the winter night drive. But I had also found something else. I had found hope.